Hi, welcome back. I'm Kelsey, and today I'm going to be walking you through how I find, edit, and use reference photos in my artwork. So to start off, let's talk about how I find reference photos. Well, obviously it would of course be ideal to go outside and travel and take my own reference photos of mountains, flowers, and whatever. That is unfortunately basically impossible right now, so I rely on Pinterest and Instagram mostly to find my reference photos. I use Pinterest as sort of a library of sorts of reference photos that I've collected from all over the internet, so Unsplash, Instagram, like various more niche websites, and then Pinterest itself. I collect all of those photos and I categorize them. So I have boards talking about landscapes, talking about hands, anything that I paint on a regular basis I have a board for. And I think this is really important because I have this backlog of really great photos that I can draw from whenever I want that I've already basically curated of things that I want to paint. So I really highly recommend Pinterest. I could also see it working if you had just a folder on your computer with various subfolders, and it would serve the same purpose, but essentially I want to save myself some space on my computer, so I just have them on Pinterest. But yeah, so one thing to note, of course, is that if you're trying to copy a reference photo exactly, you should try to find royalty for your reference photos, or at least obtain permission from the original photographer, just to make sure that you're not stealing. Yeah, so that's important. If you're picking and choosing things from reference photos and your style is much more abstract and you're not rendering these hyper-realistically, I would say that it's probably not as important to obtain permission to use a different photograph, to use a specific photograph, because you're sort of hodgepodging things together and the final piece might not even remotely resemble your starting point, your reference photo. So yeah, something to keep in mind. So when I'm about to start a painting and I'm looking for a reference photo, there are a few things that I look for. Let's go through them. The first off is, as you can see here, I of course have tons and tons of sections on this Pinterest board called Art Reference Main, which I'll leave in the description if you want to take a look at it. And basically they're all sorted by topic, so I have some for skies, sunsets, still life photography, hands, I paint hands fairly often, clothing, just different aesthetics, buildings, landscape, urban, flowers, plants, etc. And then I have some that I haven't categorized yet down here. So taking a look at my Pinterest board for landscapes in my art reference folder on Pinterest, we've got a few things going on here. When I'm looking for a reference photo, I'm looking for two things, right? I want a visually interesting sky. I don't want just a solid color as the background. I think that's not as super visually compelling. And I'm also looking for something in the background and the foreground. So I want some kind of thing to look at, to paint that's closer to the viewer, to sort of draw you in. Be that flowers, a house or something, some kind of plant situation, a tree maybe, and then you want some other elements to sort of break things up in the composition. So let's look at this image right here. It's sort of the Swiss Alps, I think you've got, or maybe in Italy. You've got these really spiky mountains, these really sort of fluffy clouds, and then you have some trees, and then this fence post. This fence post is sort of coming out from the left toward the center, and it's sort of, there's some foreshadowing going on, but you also have some rocks that are pretty close to the viewer, and then that person in the distance provides some scale if I wanted to paint that in as well. And then you have a lot of diagonal lines in this painting, right? So you have this diagonal line from the slope of the trees that's sort of broken up by that taller tree towards the very far right, and then you have the mountains sort of drawing your eye down, and then the clouds sort of bring you up. So when I think about reference photos, I'm thinking about how my eye enters and exits the frame of the photo. So if there's a lot of just diagonal lines in one direction, maybe I look through that photo really quickly and it's not super visually interesting. But if I have things touching all of the corners of sort of the frame, and maybe that visual line has this vertical line to stop it. As we see here with this tree line, there is a thing, a taller tree that sort of subsects that or sort of stops that line. I think that sort of helps you stay in this photo a little bit longer. So I'm also looking for a lot of colors happening, but also I'm thinking about what colors I know how to blend, what colors I have on hand, and how viable this is as an actual piece for me to paint. So there's a lot of things happening in these mountains. A a lot of sort of little details that I would probably have to condense. I'm seeing at least 3 different types of gray, probably 5 or 6 actually. At least 3 different versions of this green and some beige. That's a pretty doable color palette. That's not too intense. And especially if I edited this photo into the saturation, those mountains would probably be much more blue. So that's a thing to consider as well. Okay, so now that we've covered where I find reference photos, let's talk about how I edit them and how I transfer them onto my canvas. Alright, so this is the reference photo that I'm going to be working with today. As you can see, we've got some trees on either side, some rocky stuff down here. There's some water, and then you can see the reflection of the mountains. This is probably sunrise or sunset, I'm not sure which, probably sunrise. And so you've got this pretty boring sky. I think I'd probably add in some clouds over here if I was thinking about having a lot of this in my composition. But I think something to be concerned about is sort of this island over here, or this sort of part of this little peninsula. It's almost right in the center, which I really don't like. It's maybe about 60-ish% of the way across. I think I would probably try to sort of make it less centered, and then I think if I zoom out, there's a lot more rock here than there is visible when I sort of zoom in. I think I'd maybe go for like a sort of vertical composition here, and then we bring in this and sort of try to have it in more of the foreground area so you have something a little bit closer to the viewer. When I'm translating this onto my surface, I'm probably going to add in some more clouds over here just to make that sky a little more interesting, a little bit spicier. So yeah, so let's jump into an overhead shot, and I will edit this photo just so you guys can sort of see what I do. Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do with this reference photo is load it into Visco. Alright, so let's edit this. Sometimes I'll spend a few minutes sort of scrolling through these presets just to sort of see what kind of jumps out at me. I like how bright these are. I don't like the ones where it sort of desaturates it and makes everything more yellowed. I think I might start off with something like this and then just make it a little bit more dull, probably only at half strength. I kind of like it when that's really bright up there, so I might change that. Okay, that's a little more bluish purple. Okay. And then I know that I'm going to be working with an 8x10 today. I want to stick with these like 4.5 and 5.4 compositions. So I kind of like this. I think that I'll probably put a tree right here. I'm interested to see what this looks like with more saturation though. Because the good thing about sort of editing is that you can make things look really outlandish and then just scale them back when you're actually painting. So I kind of like this, like really saturated. Not so much that I'm losing photo information back there, but I kind of like how pretty these mountains look. So I might keep it like that. I think I might want like even less of these rocks actually. One thing to think about when you're painting and you're choosing your composition is like, can you accurately actually like make these marks like that small? Like if I was painting it at this size, I would not have a lot of room to render these mountains. If I was painting it an 8x10, I would have like no room. I'd have to use like a single brush stroke for most of this, which would be a challenge, but really difficult. And probably not as pleasant of an experience. So when I scale something down, I'm actually making it much easier for myself, even though I'm maybe losing the grandness of what this composition would be if I kept it big. So I entered the saturation, I changed some values of HSL, and I cropped things a bit, and that is basically how I edit reference photos. Okay, so now that we've edited a reference photo and made some changes, let's get right into painting and sort of transferring our reference photo onto our surface. Alright, I think that brings us to probably the end of this video. I showed you guys how I find references, how I edit them and use them. If you're not subscribed, make sure to click that button down below, as well as the like button. I really appreciate that. That helps new people find the channel. And I will be uploading the process of this painting right behind me that we just got started on today next week. So be sure to subscribe and comment down below if you have any questions for me. Alright,